And a very good morning to everybody. Welcome to part 5 of the CMA Mastery training. This is the final part of this 5-part series, and today I'm really going to talk about something that is going to assist you in your business, and that is getting that price right. Today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you my personal tool of how I sit down with a particular seller when we've gone through all of those areas of pulling up the prices, those discussions. And the little tool that I'm going to share with you today is so simple and so powerful, because it's going to give you a true representation to assist that seller to know where they should be pricing their property. We all know that any property that is overpriced, it sits on the market for long periods of time and ultimately can give you, as the real estate agent, a negative for your business, because that seller could then be going and say, don't use that agent. It took them nearly 6 months to sell my house. And as we know, negative news travels extremely quickly. So we want to make sure that we get it priced correctly. So that is exactly what we're going to go through today. So this is part 5, get the price right, a very powerful little part of the CMA training. So with all of my training sessions, I always start out with this famous acronym, the PCC, P, participation. Please remember, sitting in any particular session, whether it's an event, a workshop, or just a simple training, make sure that you participate. Put the cell phone aside, close those emails, close any of the messaging platforms, and put your focus into these particular sessions. You know that I always have these sessions short, sweet, to the point, so that you don't have to spend a long time and possibly get drifted with a distraction of your mind. So your participation is absolutely paramount for the success. The second, the C, it's curiosity. I have the chat box open on the right-hand side of my screen. And if you've got any questions, please, you must always ask those questions, because curiosity is what helps you to go beyond that limiting belief in your business as well as in your life. So curiosity, a very big part. If something doesn't sound right, ask the question. And the last C, which is commitment, and your commitment into doing the activities. These are the golden nuggets that we share. It's your commitment to putting it into action is what's going to get you to success. So my PCC, this is my quick little acronym. If you follow this with any training session, not only my training session, you will find that you're going to get the maximum out of that particular event. So let's kick into today. And really, I want to start out with something that really comes to top of mind. And pricing, and when you want to price the property, it happens twice. And you need to make sure that you know where you are and what you're actually going to be doing when you're pricing it right. You see, the first time that the pricing happens is with you. You see, if you're going into any particular appointment and you haven't done your homework and you don't know any of those underlying pricings and comparatives in the area, you're actually missing out on that opportunity, which means the conversation that you're going to have with your seller is going to be very weak from your side. So the pricing, it starts with you. Make sure that you do your homework and that you know this is what we need to list at. Because if we list at this particular property, then we're going to be in a good chance to sell it within this mindset that I'm also going to be sharing with you very shortly. Once you've actually got that pricing and you know it inside, only then does it happen with your seller. You see, you're going to be coming through with all that educational knowledge. You're going to be sharing all the information that you have researched, and you're going to be passing that information over to your seller. So please make sure that when you're going into any pricing conversation with your sellers, it has to start with you first. You have to be fully confident on the price that you're going through to market. There's no thumb sucking here. It's got to be accurate. And then you pass that information over to your seller. And from there, you can then start having this particular discussion. Now, having these discussions can become quite challenging, because You might have a seller that is what we typically call the A-type seller. They're a seller that really, they know what they want. They want the conversation to be short, sweet, but at the end of the day, it's their decision. And they're very, very firm on that. And if you're going into these particular conversations with a weak-minded, and I'm saying weak-minded with inverted commas, you're going to find that you're just going to take the listing at the price that your seller wants, and ultimately it's going to be overpriced. It's going to sit on the market for 6 to 8 months, and your seller is going to be the first one to say, don't use this real estate agent because they could not sell my home. Meanwhile, it was the seller that actually determined that particular price. So please make sure it starts with you, you educate, and you pass that information over. Now, when you're going in to a particular appointment, what I want you to do, and if you've got pen and paper, I'm going to share with you 6 points. I want you to go in with a mega agent mindset. Now, what is a mega agent? A mega agent is an agent that lists and sells a property almost every single day, every single week. They start producing those high volumes of commission, that high volume of turnover in properties. For probably most of real estate agents out there, we know a mega agent that's working around us, or maybe they're a TV celebrity. But these mega agents, they produce phenomenal results. And what I want to do is I did a little bit of research into the mindset of a mega agent, and I want to share that with you so that you go into your appointments with this mega agent mindset. Now, the mega agent mindset starts with the very first one. My job is to get that home sold. You're not going in there to try and make friends. It is a business. This is a product that you're going to be putting onto your shelf and you're going to sell it. That is your primary focus, is to get that property sold. And when you start with that, you will find it'll start to open up further bits and pieces of this actual puzzle. And your conversation will actually step up to a professional level. Remember, you're not an interior decorator. You're not a moving company. You're not a person to take care of any of their personal problems. Those can become secondary. Your primary focus is to get that home sold. So that's the first, that a mega agent's mindset. That's the way they think. The second, I am the expert. You've got to believe in yourself. If you're going into any appointment and you've got very low self-esteem, or your self-confidence is really, really low, you're going to be picked up by your seller so quickly. They're going to know that straight away. You're going to have that self-confidence. I am the expert. And in fact, this is an affirmation that you can say before you go into any appointment. I am the expert. I am the expert. And I'm going to get this home sold. It's a great affirmation to start bringing into your business so that when you're going into those appointments, you are the expert. So that's the second mindset that you need to go through. No lack of self-confidence, stepping up a notch. The third one that I'm going to share with you, and it's one that I use every single time, and it's what we refer to as the 14-day mindset. What the 14-day mindset is, I'm going to list this property and I'm going to sell it in 14 days, 2 weeks. I'm going to list this property and I'm going to sell it in 14 days. When you start invoking that mindset into your body and you start thinking in that fashion, where you've now started to give yourself a goal to sell the property, be that expert within 14 days. When you start working with that mindset, when a seller sits down in front of you and says, well, the market says 2 million, but I want 3 million for my property, your mindset of 14 days is going to go, I cannot sell this property in 14 days. It's way overpriced, which means I'm going to bring out my expert knowledge and I'm going to share that with you so that I can get the property sold. You can see how these all interconnect and they work with each other. So when you're going into these selling appointments, make sure that you've got that 14-day mindset. When I list that property, I must be able to sell it within 14 days. And you get that mindset, you will find that your conversations will be going in a very, very different way. Now, the fourth is really on the back of this 14-day mindset. It's always the price mindset. We've got to make sure that we get the right price. I have discussions with agents on a daily basis. Stuart, I have this listing. It's not getting any views. It's not getting any inquiries. And they always end it with this little phrase, but it's actually priced pretty well. Now, if it was priced correctly, it would have inquiries, it would have people coming through to do viewings, and you would be in a position to start taking offers. But when you're not getting inquiries and you're not getting views on that particular property, it is the price. And I use this particular example so many times. Client wants 3 million Rand for their property and we're not getting any inquiries. They don't really want to drop their price because they don't feel that it is the price. They think their property is worth it. And I say to them, if we listed your property for 1 million Rand, would it sell? And I guarantee you, they always go, yes, but I don't want to give my home away. And I said, but if we list your property at 5 million Rand, would it sell? They will actually go, well, that's way too much. I'd love to get that money, but I don't think it would sell. And there you've just proved the point that price matters. We have to get it at the right price to get it sold. So when you're going into these conversations, you've got to have that pricing mindset to the actual market. And the only way that you can do that is if you're an expert. You've got to understand that particular market. Now, the fifth one that I want to share with you, and this actually came on the back of sitting in a mastermind session with mega agents and listening to them. There is no such thing as inventory. Inventory is something that's a stock item that sits on your shelf. When I was in this mastermind session, and these are mega agents in the US, they were busy talking about how long they have a property in their particular books. If they have a property that's in their books for more than 60 days, that's 2 months, there's something wrong. They actually have a conversation with their particular sellers to say, we're either reducing the price or I am actually handing this particular property back to you. You see, when we have the mindset of inventory, we have the mindset that we want 60, 80, 100 listings and we start building up that portfolio, but we're only selling 1 or 2 of them. The rest of that inventory is actually going to start costing you money, and it's going to start creating a negative impact on your business because of that bulk of properties that are not selling. Those sellers, they had that motivation to sell, and they're going to start creating a negative by saying, my property's not moving. I want to start looking for another agent. And that's that negativity that starts to come out. So I don't want you to look at a property as being inventory and stock. This has got to be something that lands in your books and you sell it and you move it out straight away. Inventory is something that will sit for more than 60 days. So I want you to go back and have a look at all your listings. Anything that is older than 60 days, ask yourself the question, should I still have that in my particular books? Then we come down to the last and final point of the actual mindset. And this is, there are the 2 best pricing opportunities that you have. Now, there's only 2 chances that you have to have these particular discussions. The first chance that you have to have a pricing discussion is the very first time that you meet with your seller. This is that first pricing negotiations, the CMA presentation to educate your particular sellers. Educating them not only on the prices on the market, but what's happening in the market, the trends, all of this information. You've got to have this particular conversation at day 1. You don't go to a property, view the property, and then go back the second day and say, well, the property is fantastic. We need to do a little bit of this. And then the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and then the 6th day, we start talking about price. By that stage, the weakness of your conversation has actually gone right down. You want a strong conversation and you have it the very first time. So that's the first time that you have your best pricing opportunity, is when you're presenting. Your second pricing opportunity is normally around about the 4-week mark, around about those 30 days. And that's when you're starting to talk about a price reduction if it has not sold. You only have these 2. The first time you meet, and roughly in about 30 days, when you start talking about a price reduction. Those are the only times that your seller is going to start to respect you as a mega-minded agent. If you're an agent that every single week is saying to them, hey, I think we should reduce, hey, I think we should reduce, hey, I think we should reduce, they're going to start saying, well, this agent actually doesn't know what they're doing. So I don't want you to fall into that trap. I've always had it. I meet with a client, I have that pricing negotiations. I set an expectation that in 30 days, we're going to have a pricing negotiation to see where we're at, because we can take in the market trends, the viewers, and so forth. And then we make that change at the 30-day mark, and that change will stick until the property is sold, or I hit the 60 days, this property is not moving, and then we make a decision to go on from there. So this is the mega agent mindset that I want each one of you to start implementing slowly into your business, so that you become a mega agent and you're starting to think like one, because that's where it all starts. It starts with you. It starts with your mind, and it starts with the way you think. So go through that. My job is to get the home sold. I am the expert. It's the 14-day mindset. It's always the price mindset. There's no such thing as inventory, and there's those two best opportunities to have those pricing conversations. The first time you meet, and typically the second time 30 days afterwards, or when you have negotiated to do that price negotiations. Now, when you're having these conversations with your particular seller, especially around price, I have a simple tool, and this is a tool that I want to share with you, and it's very straightforward. I typically always carry around with me a little A5 notepad, because they're the easiest ones to actually fit into my bag when I'm going out to clients. And what I do is I actually call this particular tool, it's the talking pad. And this is how I educate my particular sellers, because it's not only just a fixed price, there are some factors that we need to bring into it. And it's these factors that's going to get us to that point of pricing it right, of what we're going to the market to list it at. And that's what we're talking about, is what is that price that we're going to go to market. The CMA gives you what you expect an offer is going to come in at, but we need to make sure that we're not going in at the price that's too low. We want to get as much as we can for our particular sellers, but there are some certain conditions. And this little talking pad is really what I've used for many, many years. And I'm pretty sure that you're going to enjoy this particular talking pad. So what does this talking pad look like? Well, it's something where you can actually have it pre-printed if you want, or you can have a blank piece of paper. It actually takes you to an expert level, because it becomes an educational platform. And this is how my script typically goes. So, Mr. Seller, we want to talk about, we've seen that the CMA, this is what we're anticipating an offer to get at, but really we need to look at how and what price we're going to be going to the market at. And we need to have a look at the trends and the conditions. So the trends of the actual market itself and the condition of your particular property. And what we're going to be looking at is, and we write down there, a premium, a market, and a wholesale. So we've got three different prices that we can look at. And these particular prices are going to be determined by trends, conditions, and you'll see there's a third element, time. So let's have a look at the first element, which is trend. So this is where you can go on the left-hand side and say, well, the trend, if the market is improving, in other words, prices are starting to go up, we could actually start pushing it towards a premium price. However, if prices are coming down, they're starting to soften a little bit, and we can see the markets coming down, then we need to start moving towards a wholesale price. So we've got in the middle the market, which is our CMA price, and we can see whether we need to go up or whether we need to go down in order to get the most amount of money for this particular property. So the first is the trend that we're going to have a conversation, and I'm going to share with you that trend, how to actually determine whether the property prices are going up and how if they're going down. The next is the condition of the home. And if it is a modern home with great finishes, well, then we can start to push that premium price in there. However, if the home is neglected or it's actually deferred from a lot of the maintenances, it's going to start to drop it down because the buyers are going to say, hey, we need to spend money on this particular property. So we've got these two different areas. What we've also got, the third element, is time. And time is something where, well, how soon do you want to sell your home? Because if you want to wait 12 months, which remember is a mega agent mindset, we don't really want to wait 12 months. But if we wait 12 months, well, we can push to the premium. If we want to sell it quickly, we need to drop that down to the actual wholesale price. Now, I've only used these terms, premium and wholesale price. You can use whatever words you want. But really what I'm doing is I'm sharing with you a high price and a low price, a price above market value and a price below market value. And I've just really used those terms. You don't have to use those terms. You can use whatever terms that you feel comfortable with, or alternatively, you don't even have to put the terms inside there. You can actually just write the pricings and work it from there. So let's go through these three elements, the trend, the condition, and the time, to know where we are actually falling in. So the first, it's trend. And trend, I did cover this in a previous part, but I will go through it again. Is the market going up or is the market going down? And the way that I actually do this, and I use Lightstone as the tool to determine that, I will go into Lightstone, and when you open up into Lightstone, on the left-hand side, there's a nice little menu option. You'll see Suburb Report. What you'll do is you'll select Suburb Report. You will then enter in that particular suburb that you're wanting to actually see. What is the trend looking like in that particular market? Down in the bottom, you'll then click on search, and right at the bottom, it will come up with a search results. You click on that little view button, and it will then open up a new screen. So you click on that view button, it comes up with a new screen, and it is a lot of information that then comes out. In that particular screen, you need to scroll down to the property transfer information section. Now, what I've done here is I've cut out the middle components. I only have the heading and I've got the footer of this particular section, because these are the two areas that's vitally important to identify. Is the market going up or is the market going down? So what we do is we start looking at the 3-month mark. Now you can see I've closed up in the header. We've got 3 months. We've got our total right at the bottom of 1.98 million Rand. Just bearing in mind the amounts given in Lightstone, you need to multiply that by 1,000 just so that it makes it easy for the screen. And that will give us our 3-month average. We then move across to the 12-month, which is the next column. And you'll see the 12-month average, and we've got it at 1.808 million. Now we can actually have a look that 3 months is much higher than 12 months, which is giving an indication that the market is actually going up. It means that in the current times, the last 3 months, it's actually the prices are starting to increase. If it was the reverse and 3 month was less than the 12 month, it means the price is starting to go lower. Now, this is a great way. You have the suburb report printed out, and you can share this information with your sellers. You can actually write this out, and bearing in mind, you've got your talking pad, and you can actually add on and say, now we can see the trend is actually going up, which means, Mr. Seller, this is actually great news for you, because with the market actually going up, we're actually looking in a position where we could get probably a little bit more for your property. It's a nice, great news. But if it's going down, hey, Mr. Seller, we can see by these trends, it is going down. It's educating them so they can understand why we're actually listing their price at a lower price. So that is the trends that we're actually starting to work for. Very easy, very, very easy. So 3 month higher than your 12 month, trend is going up. 3 month lower than your 12 month, the trend is going down. Straightforward and a simple little report that you can actually work on. Then we start looking at time as an option. And generally, as we're speaking, market, we're working around about 60 days. Now, 60 days, you'll see that when we're working in the mega agent mindset, We actually do not want inventory. We do not want properties that have been on our books for more than 60 days. So we're working on that 60-day as an average, but we don't want any properties higher than that. So ultimately, we're going to ask the actual seller, how soon do you want to sell? Because that's where the timing comes around. And if the seller is saying, well, you know what, we're not in a rush, which is always a sign for me that they're not in a rush to sell, but I'm in a rush to make commission, because ultimately we make a living from the commission. So when a seller says, hey, I'm not in a rush, it's always a warning bell for me. But what this means is that if it is a well-priced property, we can see things. It's properties that are over 120 days. So when they say to you, hey, we're not looking at selling in immediate terms, we're happy with 6, 7 months of going through there, that would ultimately be looking at a premium type of listing, which puts it into that higher category and they can price it higher. But then we have the reverse where, hey, I need to sell this house like immediately. Well, then we're starting to look at what we call the 14 days, which then falls into the wholesale. So this particular part is information that comes directly from your sellers. You have to ask them the question, how soon do you need to sell your property? It's a question that so many agents do not ask. And I want you, every single one of you, make sure it's part of your script when you're going through your sellers presentations and your CMA, ask them that question. How soon do you need to sell? Because that information, when it comes onto negotiations, once you've got an OTP, will help to actually close that gap. So here you've actually got it over 120 days. It starts pushing it to a premium listing. Under those, round about the 14-day mark, you're looking at a wholesale. And if it's round about the market, we're looking between 14 to 60 days. So this is something that comes directly from your sellers. So you have to ask them that particular question, because that will give you an indication of where you can go in the actual market itself. And there are times where we know that things are going to change. So there might be news of interest rates dropping in the next, say, month or so, which they're not. And that could actually help with the actual market and turn things around, which means we could push up to sell a little bit longer. But please do make sure that you're asking your seller, how soon do you need to sell? We then come on to the last part, which is the condition. And when we look at the condition of a property, there are the 3 areas that we're looking at. And what I'm going to share with you is how you can ask certain questions to put it into these particular categories. So when we start looking at a premium, what we're actually looking at is there are no immediate changes. So nothing needs to be done on the property. Now, for many times, the seller can say, hey, but we've done the tiles, we've done the kitchen, we've done the bathrooms, so nothing needs to be changed. Remember, that's their preferences. The second part of that is the upgrades to these areas have been completed within the last 2 years. So you need to ask that particular question. Hey, what renovation work have you got or done? Well, we actually last year we did the kitchens, and in the beginning of this year we did the bathrooms. These are big tick points, because these are features that you can actually then sell over to your buyers to say, hey, this house is newly renovated. You can even smell the paint. It's still waiting to dry. The floors, the kitchen, the bathrooms, everything had been done within the last 2 years. Now, by selling that to the particular buyers, can push it up to a premium property. And ultimately, when we start looking at a premium property, we can take that CMA value that we've calculated and we can increase that price up to 8%. Now, please bearing in mind, don't just take the CMA and add 8%, because you've got to take into consideration the time factor. You've got to take into consideration the trends as well. So all 3 factors come in together so that you can start working those particular prices. But you can increase it up to 8%. When we start looking at the market price, and this is really what you've come across at the CMA value, also there's no immediate changes. However, upgrades have done between 3 to 8 years ago. So they've been in the property for a while. They may have moved in, changed the bathroom. They've been there for 7 to 10 years, and they haven't actually done any changes thereafter. Now, what's going to happen is your buyers that come in, they want something new. There's a high probability and a chance that they're actually wanting to do all of these upgrades and changes to modernize it, because things do change over time. So you can always ask that question, when last did you do renovations? Less than 2 years, 3 to 8 years. Now you've got that condition that comes in. Then we get onto the last one, which is the wholesale. And at the wholesale, it's going to be a property when a buyer moves in, they need to make changes immediately. So for instance, from the outside, it needs to be painted. You can see the paint is peeling off. You can see the fascia boards and the gutters needs to be replaced. When you're walking in, there are broken tiles. There's things that needs to be replaced within the year. You look at a bathroom, it's really outdated. You can see that the color is that bright maroon or bright blue or bright green that we all absolutely love in those bathrooms from the 80s and early 90s. These are properties where it needs to then have that pricing adjusted. Now here, again, we start looking at taking that CMA value and we drop it down to a maximum of 12%. Now again, you've got to look at the conditions of the entire property, not just take it straight down to 12%. We're looking at it as a percentage, maybe half the house needs to be upgraded or a quarter. You can drop it down accordingly. The trends in the market, the trend might be going up, which means that you can actually push it higher into that line. So this gives you guidelines to help you when you're actually working out those particular prices and working into the condition of the actual property itself. So just use these as guidelines when you're going through, and you'll see when you start putting them all together. Now we're going to start looking at the actual price. And the price is looking at properties that have already sold. Because we're looking at that CMA as a base, there are a couple of little indicators that I want to share with you. And it's also properties that are currently on the market. And we always use that 5 by 5, looking at 5 properties that have sold and 5 properties that are on the market. So the 5 properties that have sold in the last 12 months, that is a key. Don't put a property that sold 3, 4, 5 years ago, because things can happen and change in the industry. We want to get it as close to the timeline as possible. So when we start looking at that, it becomes a trailing indicator. In other words, these are prices that are historical, okay? And things can definitely change. So that's why we pull up that CMA report and we're looking at historical, and we need to see what those trends are. We cannot forecast into the actual future. Anything can happen. In February of 2020, nobody could predict that we were going to go into a hard lockdown. And after that, prices dropped. And then after lockdown, nobody could predict that prices would go through the roof because the interest rates dropped. We cannot forecast the future. So when you have those properties and they have sold, you can use the term, Mr. Seller, this is a trailing indicator of where your property is going to be sitting. In other words, we're working on historical values. When we start looking at properties that are currently under offer, and I will show where you can see this if they have got a particular bond grant, this is what we call a leading indicator, and it's valid. It's what's been on the market right now. It's under offer right now. Now, you can use this information from your existing book if you have it, but I'm going to share with you where you can also see it. It's not always available because it will depend on the actual banks, and I will explain that shortly. And again, you can find that information from a Lightstone report. Then we have currently on the market. And this, where do you find this? Well, this will be through your property portals. And this would be a leading indicator, but please make note, because it is in the future, it could be inaccurate because of the overpriced properties. There are agents and sellers out there that want the higher price. So just be very, very careful when you are pulling out those 5 properties on the market. Make sure that as a leading indicator, in other words, something for the future, that it actually is more accurate than just those overpriced properties. So these are great little terms that I wanted to share with you when you're having these conversations. Makes you sound like an expert, doesn't it? Hey, Mr. Seller, we're working with properties that have sold. This is our trailing indicators for your property. Man, it just takes your elevation level up. You almost sound like an economist, but that's being a professional, and that takes you to that next level. So when we're looking at Lightstone, and this is actually the tool of where we have everything, I mentioned to you properties that have sold and properties that are under offer. Now, I've just taken a nice snapshot of the actual lightstone. And you may have noticed this before. There are properties that are in white. Those properties have registered. If you look at the column under registration, they actually have a registration date. So that is one of your trailing indicators because it's something that's happened in the past. But what we've got, the ones in blue. Now, the ones in blue, if you look under the registration, there's no registration date. Those are properties that have offers on, but have received bond grants. You see, when a buyer applies for a bond, they do the application with the bank submits that through to the deeds office, and it is actually registered as a bond. So it's registered in the deeds office, waiting for it to be connected, but the property hasn't registered yet, so it's still in limbo between the two. So when you see all of that, that can actually, when you're having your discussions, you can say, but Mr. Seller, here's the particular properties, and we can see it does show the actual offer price. That's the price that the banks have got, and that is current. So it's still waiting to be registered, and that becomes a leading indicator, which is valid right now. So when you do pull out these particular reports, especially on a property report, and you look down below and you see that, make sure that you include that into your actual reports for your sellers because it is extremely strong. Now, I talk about cleaning up of your particular lightstone report, and cleaning up means we need to remove certain properties that might not be valid for our properties that we're going to send through. So I really just wanted to share with you a simple tip and technique. What we look at is, and this is for a sectional title, for a freehold, you'd look at properties that are fairly close together, and there's another different step that you'd work on. But you're looking for matching properties. Here, we're looking in the different township, which is that suburb that we talk about, the sectional title name. We want to make sure all of them are in the same name. And then we have the different sizes. And if you look on the far right-hand side, there's a little block that you can actually select. When you select that block, you can go down to the bottom and you can actually delete that and remove those particular properties so that you're not sitting with the full 20 properties as a complement through to your sellers. You can bring it down to the 5 properties that you're actually wanting to present. So I thought I'd just share that with you as a nice little stepping stone of when you're going through. So let's pull it all the way back and bring it into the actual talking pad. You see, now that you've gone through this process of explaining the trends of the markets, the conditions, and having that conversation, asking them the timelines, you can start working with your talking pad. And the way that I work with the talking pad is I actually take the CMA value that we've worked out. We did have a variance, but I take the average of that, high, low, divide by 2. I put that into that market price where I know that is what the buyers are going to put an offer at based on the facts of the CMA, of the Lightstone report. And then I start saying, we know that the trends of the market starting to go up, but the condition of your property needs to be worked on. So we're actually looking at that in the middle. And you can see how this becomes a talking pad and a discussion with your seller to get that right price. And ultimately, once you've started to fill this in and you've got those prices that you're going at, you can have this final conversation with your seller. And this is what I absolutely love. So, Mr. Seller, we've seen that the trends of the market is going up. However, through our discussion, I've noted that you are wanting to sell your property fairly quickly, but the condition of your property, as we've discovered, needs some work to be done to it. So if you're in a position where you can improve on the condition of the property by doing some light changes, we could actually push up the value of the property and get you some more money. However, we don't want you to renovate the entire house because the chances of us getting all that money back will be quite slim. So we need to make sure that we do this in the best way as possible. So this little talking pad, it is an amazing little piece of paper that you can have the discussion, you have your notes, and at the end of it, you can tear that off and you can actually give it through to your actual seller. So they've got all the information of what you've spoken about. It comes on the back of filling in that information onto that mandate, getting that black pen signing it away, and you're getting a listing which you will hopefully sell within 14 days because you have that mega agent mindset. So I want to thank everybody for coming on to this particular call because I know you've learned something out of it.